Hello, hello, Mrs. Kimball here from Kids Cook Real Food, and I am not going to juggle these vegetables. However, today I do have some challenges for some children out there. In last week's Healthy Parenting Connector, which is our regular video series where we connect parents who want to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information they need, I interviewed Dr. Biljana Uzelac, and she's a pediatrician from the Chicago area who incorporated some integrative and more nutritional learning into her traditional MD practice. She was talking about getting kids to try new foods, and she said that sometimes having someone else tell your kids to try something new is the best medicine because it's not mom and it's not dad, and it's a little more inspiring. And so she said, you know, as a pediatrician, that's something that she does for her families. And I thought, man, not everybody has a pediatrician to do that. So I decided then and there that the very next Healthy Parenting Connector would be me challenging your kids to eat something new. So here's how this is going to go today. First, we're going to talk about 3 thoughts because I'm a thinker. I'm kind of a science geek. I love to give people a little philosophy. We're going to talk about 3 thoughts about food and habits and introducing healthy things. Then we're going to get practical because I am nothing if not practical. We're going to talk about 3 strategies for parents to help encourage more adventurous palates and trying new things and more healthy foods in their households. Then we're going to talk about 7 personality types and just, again, some really practical strategies. If your kid's like this, try this. If your kid thinks like this, try this for increasing the healthy foods at your table. And finally, at the end of this video, I'm going to talk right to the kids and I'm going to give them a challenge with a prize incentive to try something new in the next 10 days. It's the hashtag #MyKidTriedThis challenge. Okay, we've done My Kid Made This, which is awesome. This related is My Kid Tried This. Okay, cool? Everybody ready? Love it. All right, first of all, our 3 thoughts for the day. We're going to talk about how habits are king, the magic exposure bucket, and why we should all chill because picky eaters can ultimately be a blessing. And you guys, I have such a blessing of being able to interview so many health practitioners and food experts. My knowledge is just filled up to here by these other amazing people. All these interviews are linked in the show notes and above or below this video, wherever we share it. Okay, so first of all, habits are king. I learned this from Dr. Dinah Rose in her amazing interview about how we need to focus less on nutrition and more on food habits. For example, I heard from a reader once that she decided to start serving a salad at the beginning of every meal. And it was tough for about a month. Her husband and her kids were like, what is this, a restaurant, 2 courses? This is weird. But after they got used to it, this became a total habit. And now if they sit down for a meal and they don't have a salad, they feel like awkward and out of place because it's a habit to eat some raw vegetables before a meal. What a great habit. We also sometimes, as Americans, set up habits like we eat dessert after a meal. I know I have that habit. My tongue always wants something sweet at the end of every meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Okay, it's socially a little bit unacceptable to do it after breakfast, so I don't always. But like I always want something sweet. Unfortunately, that's a habit that I built. So that's how we want to think about food is what are the habits we want our kids to have? Not necessarily let's broaden their palates and get like a bajillion different foods into them, but do we want some habits for them? Do we want them to always have a healthy dip with their vegetables? Yes, we do, because that helps assimilate the vitamins in the vegetables. You know, do we want them to always feel like they need a piece of bread with their meal? Yeah, maybe not, because that's probably not the best thing for their health and nutrition. But they don't need to necessarily know the health and nutrition. They just need to build healthy habits. Okay, cool. So that's one thing to just start to think about and start to stretch your thinking. Again, Dr. Dinah Rose definitely stretched my thinking when she started talking about how habits are much more important than nutrition. And Heidi Schauster is an eating disorders expert. Her interview is also linked in the show notes. She talked about how restricting any food generally causes a child to be a binge eater on that food. So if you restrict the whole category of desserts and your kids are never allowed to eat desserts, they probably will binge eat desserts the moment they get the chance. which could be when they leave for school at age 6, or when they're in middle school and have more autonomy at age 13, or maybe at age 18 when they leave for college. At some point, they're not going to be in your house. And that comes back to habits too, is how do we form a habit of having some balance and some moderation and understanding that when we eat something that's maybe not as healthy for us, we don't have to overkill. We don't have to do it to excess, because we understand how to eat a bite or how to eat a couple bites. Okay, so we want to really try to build those habits in our family. Start looking at your dinners and your lunches and your breakfast and your snacks. Snack habits can be a nasty one, or they can be a really helpful one. What kind of habits do we want to build in our kids? Okay, so that's thought number one, that habits are king, even as we parents are trying really hard to get our kids to maybe eat more vegetables, right? Let's focus on the habits and not as much the food and the variety. The second thought for you today is that all of our kids can experience the magic of their exposure bucket, okay? When we start feeding our toddlers, everybody says, give them 10 chances to try a new food. Don't give up just because they spit it out once. But we know that all kids are different. And some kids might like a food after 10 opportunities to eat it. Some kids might like that food after one opportunity. Maybe baby Katie is a super taster and is very selective, and I need 157 opportunities to try that food before I'm going to like it. That can be frustrating for parents to have to think about putting 157 pieces of broccoli 157 times on baby Katie's plate before she'll even be open to trying it, nevertheless liking it. Okay, so we all have these buckets for each food. It's like a tolerance bucket, and some kids have bigger buckets. They're maybe a little more selective eaters. Maybe they're cautious personalities. Maybe they're, just a super taster and everything tastes much more strong to them. The great news about the exposure bucket is every time your child is exposed to that food, it counts to fill that bucket, which means if they're shopping for it, preparing it, cooking it, serving it, having that bit on their plate, that's like 5 drops in that exposure bucket instead of 1 for that meal. So it's really, really key to get your kids, especially your selective eaters, involved in the kitchen. Okay, amen. Dr. Nicole Berkins, who is a psychologist and nutritionist and former special ed teacher, she's got this beautiful trifecta of experience. She's kind of the one who taught me about these exposure buckets, and I've latched onto that and embraced that ever since, because it's such a powerful piece of knowledge for parents to have. Every exposure counts in that bucket. And the final thought for you guys is just to chill and to accept the fact that maybe someday picky eating, which, by the way, please don't call your kids picky eaters, because they will be picky eaters if you call them that. They will never break out of that box you build for them. So we'll not, other than this sentence, I'm not going to call your kids picky eaters ever, and neither will you. But picky eating can be a blessing someday. And one interview I just did with Marianne Jacobson, who is a renowned author of How to Raise a Mindful Eater, Fearful Feeding, and a couple other great books on feeding your kids, she talked about how, picky eaters may be a little more selective. That just maybe they'll be a foodie someday. If they're super tasters and they taste everything more vibrantly and more vividly than the rest of us, those are going to be, the sommeliers. Did I say that right? The ones who can taste the differences in the wines, the ones who can say, oh, there's just, this needs a little bit more cumin, or, oh, this has far too much black pepper, or whatever. Like, I don't have that. I can't like figure out the nuances of what food will exactly taste perfect. But wouldn't that be awesome if your kid could? Because they're going to be able to appreciate and differentiate their food even better when they're adults, as long as they have the right mindset. Yeah? So let's look at the strengths in even our picky, selective eaters. Let's focus on those strengths and just make sure that we're giving them a wide variety of foods and training their habits of being a little more adventurous, and not putting down the fact that maybe their palate is a little bit selective. Okay? So those are your 3 thoughts for parents. Habits are king. Don't restrict foods. Understand the beauty of the magic of that exposure bucket, and chill a little bit and focus on the strengths of your eaters, no matter how they feel about new foods. Okay, so 3 practical strategies. This will be even quicker. Number 1 is to offer consistent and varied choices. Your job as a parent is, in general, to decide what your kids will eat and when they eat. You need to require that one bite, just one bite, not a whole overwhelming pile of food, just one bite of something that your eater, your child, might say is not their favorite. That one bite has to be on their plate every single time, whether they eat it or not, but there is an expectation, okay? Keep it varied in your consistency. Your consistency is that you serve what you believe is to be healthy food. And then the variety is that within those boundaries, your kids have lots of choices that they can make, because kids need to feel that agency, that they have some power and control over their food. They do. They have power and control over what they chew and what they swallow every single time, which is why you always lose a power struggle when you enter into it over food. Your job is to present what's available for eating, and they decide how much they eat, when they eat it. Well, not when they eat it. No, this is Ellen Satter's division of responsibility. You decide what's served, where they eat, and when they eat it. They decide if they eat it and how much. And if you can remember those divisions, you have a lot fewer power struggles, especially if you can provide a consistent variety, okay? Number 2 has to do with that exposure bucket. I always, of course, at Kids Cook Real Food, strongly encourage parents to get kids involved, because not only physiologically does being involved with food fill that exposure bucket for each individual food item a little quicker, but there's a great sense of emotion when you cook, and there's an investment in that food, and it will help your kids be more likely to try it and more likely to eat the foods because of that exposure bucket. And in any case, even if they don't try it, they're still learning to be a servant to others and build up that servant's heart. And I know generosity is a trait that many parents want to build in their kids. So get your kids involved in the kitchen. Strategy number 3 is to teach mindfulness, that it's important to talk about food. We want to talk about how foods feel and taste. We want to talk about how foods make us feel. That's really important. And this is almost a thought and not a strategy, but I promise it's a strategy. And it's really a tricky one. It's difficult for me to remember what I ate and how it makes me feel, but I'm getting a little better at it. And, imagine if we could train our kids from a very early age to say, okay, you ate X, how do you feel? Is this how you like to feel? How do you want to feel? And this will help kids be more invested in their own nutrition without us having to lecture about it, okay? Because we don't need one more thing to lecture about, right, parents? All right, so that's the 3 practical strategies: consistent and varied choices, having your kids help out in the kitchen, and building an attitude of mindfulness about food and how it makes you feel. All right, now we've got 7 personality types, and just a quick strategy for each one when you're introducing new foods, okay? If you have a child who's very competitive, why not make it a competition? Can you try a new food every day for 5 days and have some tally marks? Who will eat the new food today, and make it a competition with your family, including the adults. There's lots of ways to think how you can infuse competitiveness, or even let's both make our own pesto, and the rest of the family can taste it and decide whose is better. Okay, there's so many ways that you can tap into your child's competitiveness in a positive way instead of a negative. There are those kids out there who are just the servant heart, who love to serve, who love to play hostess. Okay, these are the ones who are playing school, playing restaurant, right, and who always want to help out. Capitulate on that, you guys. Capitalize on that. If your kid loves to serve, then let them take some agency in a meal and serve that food. And then again, they're just a little bit more likely to try it because they're so invested in it. And having a servant-minded heart makes kids feel good about themselves and increases their confidence in general, not only in the kitchen, but in the rest of life. So it's like a win-win-win there. But if you've got a kid who really loves service, like, give them some authentic work to do and some service for the family, and that can really help them be open to new foods. Now, some kids are just straight up reserved. They're the cautious ones. They're a little slow they think about things more, and they're just more cautious in the world. And quite honestly, that's great. These are going to be the kids who are a lot safer, who are spending less time in the emergency room, who are engaging in risky behaviors in general less, and hopefully who are the thinkers, who are going to solve problems in our world. And we need people to be a little cautious and not just jump into every new thing because it's new. So see that as a strength. And if your kid is a little more cautious and reserved, allow them to lean into that and say, you know, maybe you don't have to try this. You can just smell it or just help me make it. Like, tone down the expectation that things have to go into their mouth, because their cautiousness and their reservation might be saying that this is new and that this is a little scary. So we need to give them more time to get used to new foods, and a bit of a concession that maybe smelling or licking or just playing with it with your fingers can be a good step for today. That exposure bucket is magical and it still counts. All right, some of our kids we know are social. These are the ones who always want to be with other people. They never stop talking. You know, they're the extroverts who are completely built up in social situations. For those kids, make trying new foods social. Have some friends over. Pick a new food to bring to a party. You know, make it fun and interesting, and make it feel like a social event. Maybe they can give a speech about their food, or maybe they can give a speech as they present their new food to the family. Again, lots of ways to capitalize on that extrovert tendency and those who love to be social. Even if you just say you get to call your grandma and your aunt after you eat this and talk about it. Okay, that might be enough to build up those social kids. Some kids, regardless of introvert, extrovert, are just fun loving, like, right? They just love to have fun. For those kids, oh my goodness, make it a game. Build a structure out of your new food. Talk about how you can blend colors and make it silly. Do kind of a challenge, or like cheers. Everyone likes to cheers their new food. There's lots of ways that you can infuse humor and even gamify the situation for those kids who are really fun loving. Now, we know there are those kids who are very analytical. They're the builders. They like to experiment. And of course, with foods, experimentation is kind of built right in. So if you've got that analytical kid, man, let them make a chart of raw food versus sauteed versus roasted versus, I don't know, something boiled or in a soup or something, and see, and they can rate those things. They could even dig into the nutrition if they're an older kid who's really analytical. You know, how does cooking change the nutrition of this food or that food? It's fascinating once you get into it, and kids who are analytical are going to be able to dig into that kind of challenge or situation better and start to make friends with that food a little quicker. Finally, personality type number 7 is your creative. The kids who are always singing and who love to put their own outfits together and are the artists, you know. And those kids are perfect for the kitchen because you can do so much with the presentation of food. You know, you can allow them to make the presentation beautiful, or set the table, or make a centerpiece, and just kind of make it a special moment for your creative kid. Also, of course, the creative kids can think about smelling different herbs and spices and what they might like to go with this new food. All of this is to say, parents, that you can figure out your child's strengths, capitalize on them, and use them as a way to help your kid broaden their palate, try new foods, and most importantly, have that habit of, I'm okay with new things. Okay, that's the habit we want, is that new things don't have to be scary. Even for our cautious kid, they don't have to be scary. They can still be hesitant about them without being scared and anxious, right? There's like a continuum. I can, you know, embrace the new food. I can be a little hesitant about the new food, and then I can be scared of it. We want to get rid of that fear and erase that, but yet allow our kids to still live within their own skin and within their own personality. Acknowledging that picky can be a blessing, and all our kids don't have to eat 2,700 kinds of food. We just want them, you know, to be able to appropriately try new things, right? Okay, did I get through all those? Yes. Now I get to talk to the kids. Where are we at here? Okay. Kids, Mrs. Kimball here, and I have a challenge for you, because I think that kids who aren't afraid to try new foods are going to be the kind of kids who grow up to be successful in business, who make more friends, and who are just happier people because they're not afraid of new things. So are you with me? Let's do a challenge today to try a new food. I'm going to challenge you in the next 10 days to choose one food that you've never eaten before and figure out how to try it. So there's a couple steps here. First of all, you get to make the choice, not your parents. You get to choose. You can look through pictures online and ask mom or dad to put such and such on your shopping list, or you can actually go to the market or the grocery store with your parents and say, like maybe I'll try that. And I just brought a couple options from our own fridge. If you've never tried a bell pepper, these are crunchy, juicy, a little sweet, sort of, sometimes. This is a turnip. It's kind of can be made like a potato, like in a soup, but it's a little sweeter actually than a white potato, but less starchy. Here we've got a parsnip. It looks like a carrot. We love these sliced up and roasted like a French fry, like a baked French fry. They're really good. My kids dip them in mustard and ketchup. What else we got here? Hang on. This is a bok choy. I don't even know where to set this down on my desk. Bok choy is actually good raw in a salad or cooked like in a stir fry or an egg scramble. We've got a beet. This will make you pee pink for those of you who are a little adventurous. And you can roast these. You can eat them cold, like cooked, but then chilled in a salad. You can mash them up with butter or olive oil. There's lots of ways to eat beets. They're a very interesting flavor. Half of my kids like them. Half of them say they're not their favorite. There's cabbage. Cabbage can be raw or cooked. It comes in red and green and a couple other varieties. It's a really interesting food with tons of ways to make it. One of my babysitters and one of my kids have a joke that they do at the annual raw cabbage tasting competition, which they do like every time we have cabbage. Guys, if you've never had an avocado, they're a fun, creamy, fatty little food that you can make into guacamole. You can put it in a smoothie. You can just eat on top of a Mexican soup or a Mexican dish or a salad. I grabbed one fruit, a grapefruit, very sour, but very interesting in the mouth. And then I've got some kale. Kale can be eaten raw. You want to make sure you find a recipe where you knead the kale, like you mash it all up, which is actually kind of fun for your hands, with some olive oil and lemon juice, and that will take a lot of the bitterness and a lot of the like toughness out of it. Or you can make kale chips, which are really crunchy and salty and a completely different experience than kale salad. All right, kids, there's a bajillion other fruits and vegetables out there. You only have to choose one for the hashtag #MyKidTriedThis challenge. Just one. You can eat it raw. You can put it in a dip. You can put it in a smoothie. You can saute it. You can roast it. You can boil it, put it in a soup, mash it up, whatever. I don't care. The fun thing is that there's usually a lot of ways to cook different fruits and vegetables. So that's up to you to get creative and look it up, or say, you know what, I'm going to be the chef one and try it. Mom, can you just serve it to me? Okay? That's totally your choice. Most kids find that if they're in charge, they feel better about it. So I hope that you'll get involved in choosing how to prepare it and in actually getting in the kitchen and preparing it. But that's not part of the challenge. Part of the challenge is just tasting it. And then if you want to win the prize, which is one of our classes for free, we've got a couple thematic skill labs. So we teach kids about making healthy breakfasts, making healthy snacks, and Instant Pot slow cooker meals kids can make. These are all a $25 set of videos. Each one is $25 set. So you can win that for your family and pick up even more skills in the kitchen that you can do more with and really fun recipes. Okay, so $25 prize. Here's what you have to do. In the next 10 days, you choose your food. You figure out how to prepare it. You either prepare it yourself or have your parent help or have your parent do it. That's kind of up to you and your parent. And then you take a picture of yourself giving it a try. It's got to at least be close to your mouth, okay? And I would like you to answer the questions. What does it feel like when you touch it and poke it, whether it's raw or cooked? What does it smell like? Give it a little smell before you try it. That's a great way to try something new. What does it taste like in my mouth? And what does it chew like? What does it feel like in my mouth as I'm chewing it? You know, because texture can really change our experience of food. And of course, texture is very different in raw foods and cooked foods. If you share that picture in the comments below this video or anywhere public on Facebook or Instagram, social media with the hashtag #MyKidTriedThis, you'll be entered in our competition for a random draw for a free $25 class. Cool? I really want to see you guys do this. I think trying new things is such an important skill. Mrs. Kimball's pulling for you. My whole team here at Kids Cook Real Food is pulling for you. Kids, try one new food in the next 10 days. This is the My Kid Tried This challenge, and I know you can do it. Parents, I will see you next week for another great episode of the Healthy Parenting Connector. Have an awesome week, everybody.